21, 22, orange.
I was thinking that you were either going to open the podcast with something from the music or one of Regan's like foul lines from the film.
Honestly, I was surprised at kind of, not to say they were tame, but I was expecting
Yeah.
more. But then again, it is
By
1970,
today's
whatever.
standards.
Yeah.
Well, ironically, like the line I remember the most isn't even any of her lines. It's the director's line where he's like, "I think I have a pubic hair in my drink." That's the line I remember the most. So.
Yeah. Fuck me. That's the other one.
Yeah. And like you suck a cock or whatever she says.
Yeah. And then the F slur.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Shout out.
The Uncultured Pop Culture Podcast. My name is Brandon, joined as always by
David, the co-host. I almost forgot.
There you go. Okay, I was gonna let you say it.
I also want to shout out that Brandon has a haircut. You guys obviously can't see it, but it looks good. True. It looks fresh.
Thank you. I try to be fresh. Keep up with the times. Maybe, as the kids say. I don't really know what the kids say these days. I think they say skibbity toilet.
Well, aside from that, they say a lot of stuff that sounds weird, like skibbity toilet. But if you were trying to stay with the times, you should have got a broccoli haircut.
That's very true. I should have gotten a perm and broccoli haircut, or the ice cream scoop hair. Have you seen that? Where it's like a disc around your head, and it's just like it looks like an ice cream scoop because then the top is like flat.
Yeah, I might have seen that, to be honest, but it sounds weird.
Yeah, it's really rough. That's what the youths are up to these days.
The youths compared to us old people.
Speaking of the youths, Music Has the Right to Children, which is our album this week.
That's right. And they exorcise a demon from, I was going to say a baby, but it's not a baby, a girl.
Yeah,
who's also
11, I think she is, right?
Something like that. So
yeah,
it's a very, very youthful episode, guys.
It is a very youthful episode.
I wouldn't watch this film with an 11-year-old.
I also would not.
Yeah.
It wasn't as scary as I thought, but it is like disturbing generally. So
yes. And I will talk about the ways that I think it's scary, or like why it's a horror film, or like how it uses its horror later on.
It's scary to think about the Catholic Church.
That's right. Back then they didn't know what was going on. But anyway, shout out to Sinead O'Connor. Is that how you say her name? Sinead. Sorry.
Yes. Shout out
Irish
to her.
Names.
Rest in peace.
Speaking of, I just mentioned a musical artist. What have you been listening to?
Great question. I honestly don't remember because most of the stuff I've listened to this week wasn't on Rate Your Music, so I wasn't able to like log it and keep track of it. There was a bunch of stuff that came out in the past week, but I don't remember any of it. So I'm sorry to everyone at home.
Well, we'll see what you listen to tomorrow, which kind of gives away what day we're recording on, but I'm excited. Or tonight.
I will be listening to Lord's new album, which is coming out tonight.
Ooh, that's exciting.
That is an album of the year contender. There's early reviews on it, and they're very mixed. So I'm not sure how I'm going to like it.
That's a bummer. I will say at one point we will cover a Lord album. So
yes, we will.
Stay tuned.
Very important.
Yes, very, very important.
But what have you been watching or listening to?
So the other day I was in Hulu. And for reference, I don't have Disney Plus, not because like I'm like, oh, F Disney or anything like that. Like I don't think they're a good company, but I just don't care. Like I just have it because I don't care about what's on there that much. The one thing though that I was interested in is Andor, which I don't know. Yes. I don't know if you've seen, but
I have not seen, but I've been wanting to start because I know everyone loves it.
Well, like a month or so ago, they put the first season on Hulu, kind of, I think, as a build-up for season 2. And so I watched it, and it was very good. I enjoyed it. But then I was like, okay, that I can't watch season 2. I don't have Disney Plus. I don't really care about getting it. So I just kind of went on with my life. And then a week ago, I checked, and they had season 2 there the whole time. And it was leaving in like 10 days. So I had 10 days or something to watch like 12 episodes. So literally the whole week I was binging the whole second season. I still have a few days left, but then again, I still have a few episodes left. So I'm going to have to hurry and catch up. But
What are you thinking about it?
it's incredible. It really is.
Better than season 1?
Yes. And season 1 is
Ooh.
already really good. Everything that people have been saying about it, I completely agree. It's also kind of weird watching it though, because it's like you're watching people fighting it like, a fascistic empire.
Yeah.
And they actually show like how it is like that, which they don't really do in the original trilogy, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like they showed them doing bad shit, but not that bad. And then you're like, wait a second, that's kind of my life, but no one's fighting.
Yeah.
So
I've heard it's very
fun.
hard to watch in the current like climate of the world.
It is. It's weird. That being said, definitely go watch it, especially if you're a Star Wars fan.
Nice. Yeah, I should definitely watch that.
Absolutely. That being said,
yeah, let's journey back about 30 years to 1998.
Right. I did not realize how old this album is, to be honest.
April 20th, 1998 to be exact. Music Has the Right to Children by Boards of Canada. Now, where do you think Boards of Canada are from? I don't know if you know.
Well, obviously, at first I thought they were from Canada, but I feel like when I searched up the album, I saw that they were from Ireland or something.
They're from Scotland.
Scotland. All right. That's
so
what it was.
Close. That part of the world.
Why did they choose Boards of Canada?
I don't know, and I didn't look it up. I forgot about that.
They just felt like it. We'll say that.
This is my first time listening to them, in fact.
Ooh.
And I thought they were from like Ontario this entire time. But they're not. Their like compound that they record in is outside of Edinburgh in Scotland.
They're probably like from a town with an impronounceable name based off how you write it.
I would assume, yeah. Somewhere up in Scotland, somewhere.
Yeah.
And speaking of unpronounceable names, this guy is Marcus Owen, Eoin. I had to look up how to pronounce that.
Wow.
Owen, Eoin.
Yeah.
And so that's one of them. And the other one is Michael Sanderson. Just two dudes. Wrote and produced every single song on here.
Oh, wow. That's a lot considering how much music there is on this album.
That's a big thing in dance music. Well, I shouldn't say dance music, in electronic music, because this is anti-EDM. This is IDM, or intelligent dance music.
Oh.
The response to EDM being for the clubs, this is for like experimenting.
For listening to at home, I guess. Or,
exactly,
I don't know,
yeah.
Something.
There are a few different genre tags here. Downtempo, IDM, ambient, trip hop, and hauntology. And I want to talk about a few of them. Hauntology in specific, that is a portmanteau, but it's coined by Derrida of haunting and ontology. And it's supposed to create a haunted nostalgia feeling. It uses a lot of public broadcast media and tape effects to create this kind of weird, I guess, nostalgic feeling, for lack of a better term.
Right.
Then you also have trip hop on this album, which is surreal, trippy, dreamy, and sometimes dark. That's from Rate Your Music. It is influenced by hip hop, but it's much more, what they said, surreal.
It's much more trippy.
Yes, exactly. And then there's IDM, which is the experimental side of electronic music. This is not music that you're supposed to dance to. This is music that you're supposed to sit down and introspect with, I guess.
Yes. Or as I like to say, background music.
Yes, exactly. Their studio might be a bunker. I don't know for sure. They say it isn't. The media who has toured the studio has said this is a bunker. So who knows? But it is in the hills in Scotland. A very kind of dark and rainy atmosphere. And then I want to read you a few things from the Wikipedia page, a few reviews. This is from the Daily Telegraph. This album is packed with warm, human, even witty material. This is from the Sunday Telegraph. Moody, edgy, weirdly beautiful ambient soundscapes. And this is from the Winnipeg Sun. Soothing, naturally textured world of warm synth tones, hip-hop beats, and millisecond vocal snippets that warble and flit a bit like bird calls. And then, the one that I feel the most, which is from the magazine Fact. An adult meditation on childhood concerned with play, naivete, and nostalgia, all tinted with rosy pastoralism. Now, I'm going to ask you a question before we dive into the songs, because I saw a very interesting review on Rate Your Music that I thought was very good. They say this album feels different to everyone. So what do you feel from it? Because I feel mostly like the Fact review, where it's kind of darker, but it's nostalgic, and it's kind of like haunted.
I can see that a lot in specific songs, and like areas of the album. I feel like I kind of also agree with like with the album that talked about it being this sort of ambient kind of landscape. I feel like for me it is a kind of a mix of those two. I agree with those two kind of depending on which song or part of the album it is.
Nice.
I feel like it is a kind of a mix for me.
I can see that. I don't need to know anything else about how you feel about the album because we'll talk about that afterwards. So we're just
Yep.
going to get right into the songs. A lot of them, I think we're only going to have a few things to say about, but there are a few that I have like
Probably.
more in-depth things, and I assume you will also have more in-depth things to say about.
Yeah.
So we'll start off with a nice short song called Wildlife Analysis. I wrote one thing about this. It's a cool, trippy intro that sounds like satanic Weather Channel music. This one is a 3.
I also have very little to say. I said it's very chill and vibey and an interesting opener. And I also gave it a 3.
Nice. We're off to a good start. We're in agreement.
Off to a surprising start, considering that we rarely agree at this point.
Yeah. Now we have the second song, An Eagle in Your Mind. This one is the first like full length song on here.
Mhm.
This song I said was way more trip hop than I was expecting. And it's very interesting and I'm glad it exists, but it's not really something that I will come back to that much. This one is also a 3.
I found the song very interesting because it was closer to what I imagined based off the title, in the sense that I felt that there were those kind of creepy sounds and darker sounds in the background. I also wanted to shout out "Oh, I Love You" line from the song. And last thing I wanted to say with the song was I like the build on it, but listening to this and the album overall, I do feel like I do prefer EDM like Daft Punk to IDM.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, I gave this a 3. This is a 3 for me.
We're in agreement.
That's right.
Track number 3, The Color of the Fire. What kind of drugs does this make me feel like I'm on? Is the only thing I said about this song. This is a 3.5. I did really like this one. I thought it was very interesting.
I agree again that it's a step above. It's a 4 for me, actually.
Nice.
I thought it was quite creepy, almost like a soundtrack from a horror film, which I really liked. It worked for me very well, more than the other 2 songs did, even though I still liked those songs. I still enjoyed those songs. But yeah, this is a 4. I really like this.
I agree that I think this one is really strong. And I wanted to say that there are a ton of samples on this album. I looked briefly and then I thought I'm not even going to do the samples because there's probably upwards of 100 on here. But one of them that I did want to shout out is Sesame Street, which is where a lot of these weird like sounds come from, like the sayings, like people talking.
Yeah.
So most of that is from Sesame Street. So the I love you stuff is from Sesame Street. Whatever's going on in this song is from Sesame Street. And then there's another one later that has like kind of vocals. I think the orange and the counting is from Sesame Street as well.
You got to use whatever you can use.
Yeah. And I really liked that. And I wanted to say one thing is I'm kind of like breezing through these songs a little bit because I feel like it's hard to describe them without hearing them because the feeling you're going to get is very different from everyone else.
Words can't really do justice to what it sounds like, I think.
I agree.
Regardless of whether you like that sound or not, like either way, you can't really do justice to it. You kind of have to listen to it to understand, what it is, I think.
Yeah. And there is one song coming up where I have a note that's kind of going to put this into perspective for you. These first few songs, at least for the way I'm describing the album for the audience.
Right.
Track number 4 is Telephasic Workshop. I believe that's how you say that. This one is cold and trippy, and it feels like being trapped in some sort of sci-fi world that has parts of our world in it. This one is also a 3 for me.
Jumping off your note of the sci-fi world, I wrote, it feels like Tron Legacy, but minimalistic.
Yeah.
That's the main thing I got from this song. It also felt very 80s to me, which I feel like kind of connects to Tron, considering the first one was in the 80s. This one worked less for me. To be honest, I think maybe because of the length of some of these songs and because I was sitting and focusing on the album instead of having it as more like an ambient soundtrack.
Background music, as you said.
Exactly. The length of some of these songs and the repetition, which we all know I am not the biggest fan of always. Here I wasn't particularly like a fan of it. So it did start to get kind of boring, which brought it down to 2.5.
Okay.
I still think that it's, it's interesting, even if I don't particularly like it that much.
Yeah, I agree. This was one of the ones that I was kind of like, this probably would be my least favorite song
Hmm.
because I don't really, I mean, three's the lowest score. I'll spoil it for everyone right
Right.
now. But this was the one that I was kind of like, it's fine.
I will say 2.5 is also the lowest I go. So
Okay. Is this your least favorite?
I'm not sure
Yeah.
because of something that we will discuss in a sec, like pretty soon.
Okay.
You guys will see why.
I have a feeling that what we're going to discuss is going to be in like the same song. But before we get
Yeah.
there, we have track number 5, which is Triangles and Rhombuses. I wrote nothing about this song and I didn't give it a rating because I don't even know what to do with it. It's just kind of like an interlude of some sounds, and it feels
Yeah.
like it just kind of connects tracks 4 and 6 together.
I wrote two things. I said starts off very quiet and and I gave it a 3, and I don't remember
Yeah.
the song at all. Thinking back,
I mean, it's forgettable, but it's also just kind of like there's sounds and it's like 1 minute long too. So
yeah,
there's really not like much going on with this one, but it's cool in the context of the album of like kind of
Yeah.
connecting the ideas together. So I'm not mad at it. But track number 6 is 6010. Sounds like getting chased by childhood cartoon characters through the club while on some undiscovered substance from the Amazon. This one's a 4. I really like it.
Oh wow, damn.
This is the song where things started to make sense, and I'm going to spoil what I say about the next song. The only note I have is it's starting to click for me, I think.
Oh,
This is kind of when the album became something that I understood. If that, like,
Right.
I don't know really how else to say it other than like it's kind of a weird intro, and then I kind of like buy into the nostalgia that it's like trying to give me, and I think it is working at this point.
That's interesting because this song was the start for me of where things kind of start to fall apart. We
Yep.
are diverging.
Well,
Um,
but the interesting thing is that we both have like a reaction with this song. Like this is the one where
yeah,
it starts.
this is the shifting point for both of us. I thought it was interesting. There was interesting elements in this song. It kind of felt like background music from a horror video game to me. With like this unsettling sounds and things like that. Ultimately, like while I enjoyed the beginning, I felt like it just went on for far too long, which is something I'm probably going to say quite a few times. And also,
yeah,
what I said I was going to bring up several songs ago is that the Kesha effect is strong for me in this album, I will say. I feel like it's been kind of strong in the last several albums, to be honest.
yeah.
But it really hit with this one. And for me, songs started to like mix together. And I was like, I don't even know where one song ends and one song begins because there are similarities. Not saying that they're all the same, obviously.
Mhm.
But the Kesha effect was pretty strong in this album. And yeah, I gave this a 2.5.
I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think this is where kind of the other part of the Kesha effect comes into play, which is when you kind of get locked into this, everything starts to sound the same and we're getting into a vibe. It's either do you like it or not? And in this
Yeah.
case, I do really like this. So
Right.
I agree that this is kind of when it starts to set in. And then
Yeah.
these songs, I'm kind of like, oh, these are really cool,
Well, and the thing with this album is I could totally see me loving pretty much every single song on this album if I was listening to it, like if it was in the background
Yeah.
and I was just doing something with it on. For me, this style of music doesn't work nearly as well if I'm, sitting down and specifically focusing exclusively on it, which is what I was doing. So I think, my scores are probably quite reflective of that. And I would like, these songs a lot better if they were just in the background and I was just, doing whatever, doing dishes or something.
Mhm.
Even though
I
I
think-
rarely do dishes.
Self-admit right there.
That's right.
I think that this album is very interesting because it feels like it should have some sort of visual companion to it,
Yeah, it kind of does.
like almost like an analog horror kind of thing, because it's very nostalgic, it's very haunted,
Yeah.
and it evokes like certain feelings, especially like in some people. Like some people absolutely hate this album, which I think is very interesting. And
Right.
I actually saw a TikTok of this girl who listened to 1,000 albums last year, and they're like supposedly the best albums. And she listened to this album and said it was one of her least favorite ones out of all 1,000 things that she listened to last year. And I thought it was very interesting because everybody in the comments could not like handle that because they're like, this is one of the greatest pieces of music ever written. And it's very specific to certain people. And I think that like,
if it clicks for you, it clicks.
Yes. And I think it did click for me at this point. Like at track 6, 60-10, I was kind of like, I get it now. So I don't know. I do think that this is like a very interesting album, and I think everybody should listen to it because
I agree.
You have no idea if this could be one of your favorite albums of all time or if it's just like, it's whatever background music.
You need to experience it pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I did kind of want to say that having a visual component to this, I feel like this is kind of something that's going to come back now, this movement, this hauntology stuff, because we're kind of in the age where everyone's yearning for the 2000s again.
Yeah.
So it's only a matter of time before somebody picks up a old camcorder or something, and like finds some cassette tapes and CDs from that era and make something like this.
I just realized it's kind of weird how we went from like yearning for the 90s, then the 80s, and then now it's the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
It was like this weird little shift back.
It's all cyclical. Track number 7 is Turquoise Hexagon Sun. And like I said before, the only note I had on this song is it's starting to click for me, I think. This one's a 3.5.
For this song, I did like the lullaby kind of aspects of it. Again, this is a 2.5. It did feel too long for me and kind of too similar throughout the whole song. So
yeah. Now tracks 8 and 9, I kind of want to do together because I only have one note between the two of them. These are Kaney Industries and Bakuma. I don't know how to say either of these, so shout out to them. I just said these songs kind of make me feel weird. They're both rated a 3. But they're very short and they're just kind of like interludes, kind of connecting you to the next very memorable song, in my opinion, which is Roy G. Biv at track 10.
Interesting, because for Kaney Industries, it's also a 3 for me. Partially because I think it was shorter.
Mm-hmm.
So it was easier for me to get into it without like being like, okay, I get it by the end. Like why does it keep going? I also will say I did get Blade Runner vibes from Kaney Industries. Then Bakuma, I'll go with that.
Sure.
I literally just wrote it's okay and I gave it a 2.5. It was just very for me. That being said, my little streak of I don't really like this is coming to an end.
With track number 10, Roy G. Biv.
That's right.
This is one of the most memorable songs on the album, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It feels more warmly nostalgic instead of like hauntingly nostalgic like the other songs. This one's a 4. I really enjoy this song a lot.
I completely agree. I think it's a big step up over the middle of the album, which to me personally feels like the weakest part of the album. This is my second favorite song. It's at 3.5. I love the beat especially.
Track number 11 is Rue the Whirl. I wrote one thing about this, which is that I need to hear someone rap over this, preferably someone with an annoying voice. This is a 3.5.
It was interesting. The opening of this song felt like a loop to me, which I thought was very interesting. And it had a vibe that works for me. It worked better than the songs in the middle of the album, which also have their own vibes. I guess I could say the style of this song worked better for me. I do think at some point it becomes a little repetitive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that being said, the fact that the style works better for me did keep it at a 3.
Yeah, that's the same way I thought about it at like a 3.5 because I do really enjoy it. It is probably like a minute and a half too long, but I still think it's really interesting.
I agree.
Track number 12 is Aquarius.
I just want to say whenever I hear the word Aquarius, I think of the song Aquarius from the musical Hair, where it's like, Aquarius. We'll have to watch it.
I'm not a musical person, so
I forgot.
We'll get there.
You totally don't listen to music every single day of your life. Anyways.
Well, yeah, Broadway musical, we should say.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm playing.
Boy, quit playing. Anyway, track number 12 is Aquarius, and I have a story that goes along with this one. I've lived in the same place for the majority of my life. We have a TV channel here that has its own sub channel, and it's a weather channel only.
Right.
So it just shows you the radar. This song reminds me of the music that would play on that channel, which is just local to this area.
Are you sure it's not just directly that?
No, it isn't, because it's a lot more like haunted. than the
That's
music
true.
they play.
Yeah.
And this is a channel that I would watch when I was sick and there's nothing else on TV. It's like, oh, let's see what the weather's like. So yeah, so that's what this reminds me of. And then as it goes on, I have a reference that you'll understand. As it goes on, it feels like a malfunctioning animatronic at Chuck E. Cheese's, and it reminds me of the Gravity Falls episode.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of like the pizza place there. You know,
I couldn't think of it either off the top of my head. Yeah. And I just like moved on to the next song.
Ironically, I feel like a lot of people are like, that's not a reference to Gravity Falls. That's a reference to Five Nights at Freddy's, which is like
true. Yeah.
It shows that neither of us really played video games because we just think of Gravity Falls right away.
And you know what? Maybe the vibe of Five Nights at Freddy's is kind of the vibe of this album. It is kind of like weird and creepy, you know?
Yeah, we don't know what that vibe is, to be honest.
Exactly. So go watch that episode. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, that episode is called Seuss and the Real Girl.
Yes.
So I think that's when they go to the mall and then he meets his like crush.
Anyway, go watch it. Season 2. I know it's in season 2. Seuss and the Real Girl. Seuss and the Real Girl.
Yeah. I'm leaving that in, by the way.
Oh God. Well, then you have to leave the part of you saying that you're leaving it in.
Okay, fine. I'll do that.
Okay, fine.
So all of this is left in too.
Before I begin with my notes, I do got to shout out again Orange, because you have to.
Oh yes, exactly.
And I actually wrote a long note for this specific song, and I'm going to read it right now. I think I know my problem with this album. Everything is done excellently. The beats are good. The vibes are good. It's just that it's not enough to sustain a 6-minute song, much less a whole album. That was my note.
That's fair.
Which again, I think is because I was sitting down and focusing on it specifically, which is different than having it in the background, which, I think if I was doing that, I would like all these songs more. That being said, I gave it a 3. I enjoyed it. I think the beat is very good. I think it sounds very mysterious in the beginning, especially, which I like.
Do you have cable?
Like cable TV?
Yeah.
No. We never did, actually.
I was going to say, turn on the Weather Channel and then listen to this song. It's perfect.
Yeah. I can just honestly Google the Weather Channel and go to YouTube or something.
Do that. Otherwise, I'll send you the feed of this channel that I was talking about because it's still active. I just watched it the other day. Now moving on to track number 13, which is Olsen. I wrote 2 things about this song. Kind of perfect and feels like a new digital frontier or Y2K. This is a 4.5.
Wow.
This is my favorite song on the album. It's short and it's just super cool. And it feels like when you're going to go on the internet and the internet is like a cool place to be versus what it is now.
That's really, really interesting that this is your favorite song.
You hated it?
No, I honestly just don't remember it very well.
Oh.
I have one note and it was and I gave it a 3. I honestly barely remember the song. So
damn,
that's interesting.
This was one of the most memorable for me.
Wow.
It's also shorter.
That's true, which did help it.
Track number 14, Pete Standing Alone. I don't have much to say about this song, but I thought it was good. 3.
I thought it had a nice beat. 3.
Track number 15, Smoke's Quantity. Friendly ghost type beat, I wrote. I don't really know what I mean by that.
I mean,
but
that's anything you want it to mean.
Yeah, but listen to this song and then tell me if I'm right or not. This one's a 3.5 for me.
I didn't like the background music as much as, a lot of the previous songs. And I think that ultimately brought it down a little to 2.5. We're kind of back in the 2.5 area right now. But I thought that there were some like interesting, almost jazzy elements to it, but ultimately, it wasn't as interesting to me as some of the previous songs. 2.5.
That's fair. You only got 2 left. Number 16 is Open the Light. This song is another one that feels like a new horizon to me. It sounds like a rainbow, or it sounds like the sound that would play when you start up the computer at the public library.
Yeah.
This is a 4. I'm glad you understand what I'm going for here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember, not to add another little tangent, but I remember as a kid, we'd go to the library all the time. And I would rarely use the computers because I would just go to the books and the DVDs and stuff like that. But I remember other people starting those computers and I would hear those sounds.
I'm glad that that's kind of a universal thing because we obviously grew up
Yeah.
halfway across the country from each other.
Oh, yeah. Well, same thing with how universal the old Microsoft sounds were. Remember those?
Yes,
Dun,
the good
dun,
old days.
dun, dun,
That's
dun.
that's the type of stuff that somebody's going to sample now and turn into like a
Yeah.
new version of Boards of Canada, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree. For Open the Light, I thought it actually was quite different to a lot of the songs in this album, which I did like. That being said, it did kind of feel the samey after all, kind of a little repetitive again, like to itself.
Yeah,
So I did give it a 3, but I enjoyed that it felt a little different to a lot of the other songs,
nice.
which is why I gave it a 3. But yeah,
That one's definitely one of my more like memorable ones,
yeah,
which is why I felt like it deserved the 4.
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to argue with you over your scores. I think everyone is entitled.
I think you should start becoming hostile towards me.
Fuck you, man.
Yeah, you just completely change the dynamic.
when-
Please lower it, please.
When's the next album that I'm gonna give a 5, not you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But before we go, there's one very important thought, and that's track number 17. One very important thought.
That's right.
This one's a 3.5. That's all I have to say about it.
Wow.
It's cool. It feels like the end of a public broadcast system.
It does. And I will say, personally, I've never been the biggest fan of spoken word over music. I think it has its place. That being said, I don't think it's for me, which does bring this to a 2.5. Sadly, ending this album on a 2.5 for me.
It's all right, though. I
Yeah.
have a feeling that 2.5 is going to come up very shortly
Yeah.
when I ask you what you thought about the album, but that's not yet. I wanted to say one thing about the album as a whole
Mhm.
before I ask you what you thought about the album as a whole, which is that I feel like this album is kind of perfect for the current age we're living in,
Hmm.
and that these sounds feel very like rooted in like the good old days kind of vibe, if you get what I mean. Like
I get that.
back in the 90s, the good old days were, I guess, the 70s and 80s.
Mhm.
And now today, it feels like the good old days are kind of like when we were young, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if that's just kind of a perpetual cycle of everyone growing up and then being like, my childhood was way better than my current life.
I remember people who are the age we are now back when we were kids, and they were like, oh, the 90s, the late
Yeah.
80s, stuff like that. So I do think it is a perpetual cycle. Maybe right now it's going a little bit like into overdrive, considering everything's kind of going to shit. But yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I have a feeling that this is going to be the time, like the kids who are under 10 now are going to look back at this time and be like, this wasn't really good.
Yeah.
I kind of was robbed of a childhood.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll get there in like 20 years and we'll figure
see.
out. And then maybe one of them will make the new Music Has the Right to Children.
If we're still here.
Before that, I think somebody from our generation is going to be making one like this. And I
I
don't
could see
know
that.
where it's going to come from, but I have a feeling that it's going to be a very like kind of warmer feeling than this kind of like cold, like haunted vibe that's going on here.
Yeah. And who knows where their bunker will be. Just saying.
So what did you think about the album overall?
I think, well, first of all, I want to say, regardless of my score, I think that this is a really, really interesting, very experimental album. I think it's very commendable. I think everyone that listens to it will have a very different reaction. And I do think that reaction depends on how you listen to it too.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, for me, I think everyone saw this coming, but it is a 2.5. It didn't really work for me.
Yep.
That being said, as I've kind of said throughout the whole album, I do wonder if it would work more if I changed the way that I listen to it in the future. Because I am interested in revisiting this album, I will say.
Nice. I am also interested because this is my first time listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
And once we kind of got locked in at track 6 to what the vibe of the album was, this one ended up really working for me and clicking and kind of like I understood the language that they were going for with it. So this ends up being a 4 for me.
That's really awesome. I will say, I'm happy that we finally had our first IDM album.
Yeah.
Now we've seen like both sides of the spectrum.
Yes, we've seen electronic music that you need to listen to in the club, and we've seen electronic music that you need to be snobby to listen to, for lack of a better word.
I quite literally imagined, like the way that people should listen to it. I imagined someone in a suit drinking a glass of wine, sitting in their dark living room listening to this. So, yeah,
Smoking a cig,
going back to the 40s.
watching a fireplace, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought this was an interesting album, and kind of some of the dark tones and kind of the general weirdness around it is why I chose it to kind of pair with
Right.
our horror film that we're doing this week, which is The Exorcist.
That's right. Which, I mean, I guess we should get into now. The Exorcist, a supernatural horror film with elements of body horror and psychological horror. So we're really starting off getting in deep into horror.
Which is good, because this is our first one.
That's right. Honestly surprising. Although then again, not surprising because we're kind of wussies, or I am a wussy when it comes to horror. As usual, I'm going to start with the IMDb logline, and I'm going to ask you what you think. When a mysterious entity possesses a young girl, her mother seeks the help of two Catholic priests to save her life.
Sure.
Yeah, it is kind of like a...
Yeah, I mean, she tries a lot more before going to the priests, which is kind of what I knew the log line, so I kind of thought by like minute 30, we were going to be starting to see the Catholic priests everywhere. And
it's not
it took
at
a minute.
all like that. It's very different. Well, I think it also kind of cuts out, like you said, the slow buildup and the fact that one of the priests has a personal story, which is just not mentioned at all.
Right.
Yeah, but directed by William Friedkin, who we will be talking about a lot in this episode, produced by William Peter Blatty, written by William Peter Blatty from the book The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty.
Shout out.
Shout out, man. This man was doing 3 jobs all at once. Cinematography by Owen Roisman, edited by, and get ready for a lot of names, Evan A. Lotman, Norman Gay, Bud S. Smith, and Jordan Leondopoulos. I hope I pronounced Jordan's name right. I apologize. And music by, and this could not be more fitting, music by Jack Nietzsche.
Nice.
Which I thought was awesome. And of course, starring Jason Alexander, Ellen Burstyn, Linda Blair, Lee J. Cobb, Kitty Wynn, and Max von Sydow. Did you know any of these actors?
I don't believe I did.
I will say you have seen Max von Sydow because he appears in The Force Awakens.
I did not realize that.
Yeah. We'll talk about him too quite a bit.
Real quick, why are there 4 editors?
To be honest, in my notes, I didn't really come across why there were 4.
Okay.
But considering what we're going to talk about with William Friedkin, I can guess as to why there were 4.
Nice.
As in, not to spoil anything, but he was hard to work with.
Let's go.
We love our hard to work with directors here.
Yeah, it sounds like the making of the movie was a horror as well.
Oh, yeah. For reference to the audience, I have like 5 to 6 pages of notes. That's how hard it was. In the sense that like I have so many notes because there was so much shit going on in the background. But yeah, before we get to the film though, let's talk about the novel first. As I said before, written by William Peter Blatty, he was inspired to write the novel by the real-life exorcism of 14-year-old Roland Doe and the horror film Rosemary's Baby, which I don't know if you've seen. I haven't seen it, but it's considered like a classic horror film, and it deals with a satanic cult that like not forces but helps this woman have a baby in order to get this baby for themselves, which I think you can see in some way. In this film, in the sense that there's a kid and there's the devil, or not, a demon involved. It actually sold pretty poorly until Blatty appeared on the Dick Cavett show and enthralled the audience with a discussion about whether the devil exists or not. And then right after that, it topped the New York bestseller list. There were obviously a lot of bids from studios because, hey, this book made money. Every studio is going to come after it. That being said, a lot of people were apprehensive because obviously there's a lot of stuff in this film that's problematic in the sense that it would be hard to pull off and hard for it to be a success, considering that you have a little kid, doing sexual things, saying these words, especially back in the 70s when all this stuff was a lot more taboo.
Yes.
Eventually did land at Warner Brothers, but difficulties that people saw with adapting this kind of persisted. They first approached Mike Nichols, and he wasn't apprehensive about maybe the fact that a lot of religious people would be turned off, that it would be hard for it to, be released. He was more turned off by the fact that he wasn't sure if he wanted to make a film where the whole film would have to be supported by a child actor.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if that part doesn't work, none of the film works. So
Exactly.
he knew it would be very difficult. Yeah. Some other directors, including Arthur Penn and Stanley Kubrick, were approached, but they either turned it down or it didn't work out. But Batty wanted Friedkin, as he thought he could bring an almost documentary feel to the film and thus make it feel very realistic, which I do think you see in the film. And after Friedkin's previous film, The French Connection, came out, it was a big success. He was hired. He also really liked the book. He started to read it in an evening where he had dinner plans, and he got so much into it that he just canceled his plans and just continued reading it into the night. So he was passionate about it.
That's good to have with the director.
Oh yeah. That being said, the moment he joined the film and Blatty gave him the first script that he had written of it, he threw it away. And he was like, this is not good. We got to start page 1. So they did. And in general, because we didn't read the book for the podcast, but just to give a frame of reference to how similar it is, it's pretty much the same, except things are narrowed. Like the focus is narrowed. It's streamlined. A lot of major characters in the book become background characters, which you need. And I do feel like it is it's a very focused film, which I think works. I also did want to say they did tone down the masturbation scenes for the film.
Yeah, I saw that when I was reading the Wikipedia page about it afterwards, and I was like, there was a masturbation scene? And then I kind of remember that's what that is, apparently. I don't know. She's kind of just like, I thought she was trying to like destroy herself,
Yeah. But the way it's done, I mean, it's understandable why they did it that way, but it definitely isn't maybe as obvious what she is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know if we need to see that.
I completely agree. And I will say the parts where you actually see what's going on down there was done with a stand-in. So it wasn't actually Linda Blair doing that for those shots. But yeah, let's get into casting, because there's a lot to talk about, especially when it comes to casting Regan. But let's start with the character of Father Karras. The studio was like, we want a big name, obviously. So they threw out Marlon Brando, who I don't know if you've seen in anything.
I don't think I've seen in anything, but I know who he is.
Yeah, you know him 100%. And Friedkin did not want him to be in it because he said it would become a Brando film. Which, while I think Brando is a fantastic actor, I do get what he means. He would kind of take over the film, I feel like, in some way, especially if you know the antics he would pull on sets, which we won't get into here, but we'll get into at some point. I also did want to bring up that Jack Nicholson was considered, but Friedkin thought he was too unholy to play a priest. So there's that.
Nice.
Yeah. Friedkin actually originally hired actor Stacy Keach to play Father Karras, but then he saw a play that was written by Jason Miller, who was a playwright and not an actor up until this point. And he was so moved that he asked to meet with him. And even though the meeting didn't go well, Miller pushed for an audition because he said he wanted the part. And he kept pushing until Friedkin gave him an audition, and he did the screen test, and he realized that Miller was the right choice. This was Miller's first on-screen acting job ever.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think we'll talk more about his role, but it's quite commendable.
I agree.
Yeah, I did want to throw out there. I do have a couple maybe funnier talking points when it comes to casting. Vasiliki Maliaros, I apologize if I pronounced her name, who plays Karras' mother, was discovered in a Greek restaurant, and her only acting experience was in Greek stage dramas, but she was cast because Friedkin and Blatty both said that she resembled their mothers.
Wow.
So that's why she was cast. Yeah. And then, do you remember the bum who asked Karras for money on the metro?
Yeah.
His name is Vincent Russell. He was a real drunk they found in a bar, and he wore his own dirty clothes for the shoot and was drunk the entire night, to the point that when they found him to like re-record his dialogue, he didn't remember that he had ever done it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, when he saw himself on the screen, he thought he was in an alternate universe. So just throwing that out there. Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. For the role of Chris McNeil, there were quite a few actors considered, including Jane Fonda, Audrey Hepburn, a lot of the big names at the time. Obviously, Burstyn got it, and she said she felt destined to play the role because she was raised Catholic before rejecting it later in life, which I thought was interesting. And of course, lastly, let's talk about casting Regan, because that was a very difficult role to cast. Obviously, she has to say a lot of vulgar things, a lot of sexual elements, and she has to kind of carry the whole film.
Hmm.
So it was obviously a very difficult role to cast. Linda Blair's first audition consisted of reading a paragraph of what she called the worst language you could ever imagine. When her mom asked her afterwards how it went, she just said, it was fine, which I thought was interesting. But she, the moment she auditioned, Friedkin said she was the perfect person for the role. I did want to say she was not the only person that brought Regan to life, and I did want to shout out these people because they, aren't really known, and I think they should be. Mercedes McCambridge provided the voice of the possessed version of Regan, and the voice of the demon itself, and then Eileen Dietz was Blair's stunt double. So a lot of times, in the scenes that are, kind of too violent or disturbing for Linda Blair to film, she would step in. So that's her you're seeing. Obviously
Nice.
with camera trickery, which I think is good that they did. But let's talk about production. A very, very troubled production. The film was shot in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., New York City, and Iraq. And the production is famously difficult, in large part because of Friedkin's perfectionism and the difficulty that a lot of people had working with him. But pretty much the shooting days balloon from 84 to 224 in just the United States.
Holy
Yeah.
shit.
Yes. A large reason why that happened was because of his attention to detail and perfectionism. He wanted things to be exactly the way he wanted them. So, for instance, in that scene where you see Chris walk into the kitchen while they're cooking breakfast, that took over a day to complete because he didn't like the way the bacon was smoking.
That's insane behavior.
Yes. Because of that kind of behavior, a lot of scenes stretched out to the point that one crew member went on sick leave for 3 days. And when he returned, he realized that Friedkin was shooting the same scene from the day he left.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Another big problem was that Friedkin would also reshoot a lot of already finished scenes because he didn't like something about them, to the point that crew members started to bet on which scene he was going to reshoot next. He was also very difficult to work with because he was very demanding. There was a lot of turnover. He fired the first production designer, John Robert Lloyd, because he didn't like the size of the door frames. He said that they weren't wide enough to push a camera through. And that pushed them back 6 weeks. He clashed so much with makeup artist Dick Smith, who we talked about in our last episode, actually, who, is known as one of the greatest makeup artists ever. But they clashed so much that Smith quit one day after Friedkin screamed at him over something to do with Von Sydow's makeup. He did come back, thankfully, and I do think that his makeup obviously does a lot of the work in this film. He would, in general, constantly fire and rehire crew, Friedkin, that is. As people have said, 1 second he would, warmly shake your hand, and then 5 minutes later he would say, "You're fired, get out of here." So definitely hard to work with.
Yeah, sounds like a great work environment.
Oh yeah. And we're just getting started, my friend, man. There's more, because he didn't just clash with the crew. In some ways, I would almost say that some of the actors had it worse off because they had to deal with guns. Friedkin seems to have loved to get genuine reactions of shock from his actors by, without telling them, shooting off guns right next to their head.
I don't think that's legal anymore.
It's definitely not. I doubt it was legal back then. Jason
Yeah.
Miller actually had an argument with Friedkin after he did this because he was like, "I am an actor. I act. I can act surprised. You don't have to like scare me with a gun." And I love this fact. It got so bad that Von Sydow would begin the day by asking cinematographer Owen Roisman where Friedkin had hidden his guns on that specific day, which I do love.
That's
Um,
crazy.
yeah. Rudolf Schundler, who plays Carl, their butler slash servants, actually almost fell down the stairs one time when Friedkin fired a gun to startle him. So the guns were in Friedkin's only way of kind of getting the performance he would want from his actors. In the scene where Regan spits vomit at Father Karras, Friedkin told Miller that it would hit him in the chest, and they rehearsed it that way. But then on the actual take, without telling him, he changed it so it hits him in the face. So his Miller's reaction is genuine in that scene. He was actually surprised and disgusted. I also want to say I totally get being disgusted by the vomit because it was made from pea soup, which I hate.
Ew. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The guns, they were shocking, but they didn't, permanently injure anyone. But some other things did.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, specifically poor Burston. In this scene, do you remember the kind of confrontation scene she has with Regan where Regan throws her back against the wall?
Yeah.
The way that they were doing that scene was pretty much Burston had a harness with kind of a string mechanism, and a crew member was pulling her back into the wall. And Burston came to Friedkin and said that it was too hard. She was getting a little hurt. And Friedkin said, "Of course, I'll tell the crew member to go lighter, and we'll continue shooting." Of course, he didn't do that. He went to the crew member and said, "Pull her really hard this time." And the crew member did, to the point the force was so strong that Burston broke her coccyx, part of her
Jesus.
spine,
Yeah.
and screamed out in intense pain. And that's the shot that is in the final film.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like all of that is illegal because I listened to
Yes.
an interesting podcast. Shout out The Lonely Island and Seth Meyers' podcast, where they talked about filming Hot Rod and how they injured one of the stunt people, and they were like, "We can't use that take because one of the stunt people got injured." And the I don't know if it's a union or whatever, said like you can't show somebody actually getting injured, but they ended up clearing it with the guy who got injured. So like that's insane. This is like
Yeah.
a lawless
Hey,
behavior.
it's the 70s. They didn't have any of that probably. So yeah,
And even if they did, it wouldn't have mattered because Friedkin would have just ignored it.
that's her actually getting hurt. And Burston was in pain throughout the rest of production. This actually extended to Blair because she also got injured. I will say this wasn't, specifically Friedkin's fault, but in the scene where she is on the bed and the bed is being thrown, they had constructed this kind of lift contraption under the bed to make it shake. It broke, however, and because of that, it started to shake the bed so violently that Blair actually fractured her spine, and she got permanent spinal injuries from this one, shot.
That's
And
crazy.
that's the shot used in the final film. And in the film, her screams for help are genuine because she is trying to tell them that the bed is hurting her.
I mean, even if it isn't directly Friedkin's fault, I'm sure he fired someone who would have fixed that.
Or like someone should have been on top of making sure that it was, safe, and they didn't. There
Yeah.
are ways of ensuring that your actors are safe, and the fact that she got hurt this bad shows that, it wasn't in effect. One of the harder parts, which I know is kind of crazy to say, but one of the harder parts of the film to film were the exorcism scenes themselves, because the set had to be refrigerated because they wanted the breath of the actors to show that the demon is making the environment cold. But to get that effect, the set had to be refrigerated to minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's pretty cold.
And because of the movie lights, which for those of you who don't know are very hot, they could only shoot for 3 minutes at a time because the scene would start to, or the set would start to heat up. So they would have to shoot for 3 minutes at a time, then refreeze the room, then shoot again, and continue doing that throughout the day. I also wanted to say, poor Linda Blair had to act in minus 30 Fahrenheit and wearing only her thin nightgown, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And it was so cold to the point that one morning the crew came in to see that there was a layer of snow inside the room. That's how cold it was,
My
which I'm
God.
just like, that's crazy. Maybe a funnier part of filming the exorcism scene. The first time Von Sydow heard Blair deliver her dialogue, her foul mouth dialogue, he forgot his lines out of shock, which I thought was fun. Also, when they were filming the scene of Father Baron's arrival, the very foggy scenes, the fog from the machines, started to blow up. And because of that, the firefighters thought there was an actual fire, so they arrived on the scene. And on one last lighthearted note, which is surprising that there is a lighthearted note in the production of this film, before we get into the effects, in the scene where you have the statue of the demon in Iraq, Friedkin wanted there to be vultures flying around it. So he got some animal carcasses, which I don't know how he got them, knowing him, he did it illegally. But anyway, and he put them around the statue to entice vultures to come. But no vultures arrived. However, the locals did start to talk about how a white man had arrived and was making offerings to a demon.
Nice.
Yeah, that was very fun. But let's talk about the effects because they're obviously very important for this film. As I said before, Dick Smith was brought on and he had to, create the effects of Regan being possessed and, the changes that she goes through physically. And he also had to make Max von Sydow look old.
hmm
How old do you think Max von Sydow was in this film?
Okay, I looked it up
filmed
because
this?
I was like, I wanted to know how old he was. And then I did the math because he just died like in the past 10 years. And I was
Yep.
like, what?
I feel like people have had the impression that he's been 90 since like 1960. And this film is part of why. Because he was only 44 years old. But they, put the old man makeup on him. And it was so realistic that he genuinely had trouble finding work after the film was released because everyone thought he was an old man.
Jesus.
Like this affected him.
Shout out Dick Smith.
So yeah, it looks great. And the way that they would get it is they would like stretch his skin, then put, this glue on it that's see-through, and then let it go. And that would kind of make wrinkles in the glue and make it, look like old man skin. It looks very
Interesting.
effective in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wanted to talk about Mercedes McCambridge and how she got the voice of the demon. She pretty much went full method acting. She started eating raw eggs, chain smoking, and drinking whiskey. Even though she had alcohol abuse problems, in order to get like the right raspy type of voice. She she also insisted on being tied to a chair to make the demon struggling to get loose sounds realistic. And Friedkin actually said that her performance and the length she went to achieve it terrified him. Which, if it
Wow.
terrifies him, that's sure gonna terrify me, considering the fact
Yeah,
that he also terrifies me.
She probably didn't even need the guns to act.
Yeah, yeah. He was like, I can keep these at home for this part. The head spinning effect was created using a dummy. They decided that they had to, obviously test it to make sure it's effective. And the way that they did that was they put it in a New York City taxi cab and drove it around the city. And whenever it pulled up to another car and people looked over at the dummy, they would spin its head around and then drive off, which I thought was so funny. Like, imagine just seeing that when you're driving around New York in the 70s.
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
People would not believe you when you went home and told that
Oh, yeah.
story,
They would think you're crazy. Something of note, if you watch the film, you will notice that that dummy also has, like the frozen breath because of the cold. And that was Owen Roizman's idea to make the dummy more realistic and to make it tie in with, the scene where it's an actual person, which I thought was great. Of course, the last effect that we got to talk about is one that wasn't even used in the film, in the original theatrical version, which I sent you a clip, and that was the crab walk scene. It's kind of famous. But pretty much the way it was achieved was they brought in a contortionist, Ann Miller, to create this effect with the help of harnesses and wires. That being said, Friedkin decided to cut the scene for the theatrical version because he felt that there was no way to like properly hide the wires. Later on, he regretted the change And he decided to, using digital effects that he had now, to get rid of the wires and include it in the 2000 release of the film. So depending on which version you watch, you could either watch the version without the crab walk or with the crab walk. And the first time I watched it, I saw the original version without it, and I was like, wait, like if they were doing the exorcism, and I was like, wait, where's the crab walk? Like that's famous. Why isn't that not in the film? But yeah, so if you want to see it with that version, search that out.
And I have realized that I watched it with that because when you said the
Yeah,
crab walk, I was thinking, is it different than the thing that I saw her walking down the stairs?
yeah,
And no, it
yeah.
not. That's what it is. So whatever version I watched had it.
The last thing that we need to talk about before we talk about post production is the fact that this film was also haunted. There weren't enough problems that, Friedkin was doing his stuff. The film was also possibly haunted. This is a rumor that I will say there was a rumor that it was either cursed or haunted, maybe not only haunted. But this rumor started because there were a lot of strange occurrences on set. It started with a fire that broke out on the set of the McNeil house that burned out everything except for Regan's room.
Oh,
Yeah, kind of creepy. That was followed by the statue of the demon being sent to Hong Kong instead of Iraq, or yeah, Hong Kong instead of Iraq, and being lost there. There were numerous injuries, including the ones we've talked about, that were kind of attributed to the curse or the haunting. Some of the ones that we didn't discuss include a crew member losing his toe, a carpenter missing his thumb, and Friedkin has said that Blair was the only person not to get sick or miss any shooting days, which I thought was interesting. Looking back, it's like, yeah, probably not a curse and most likely coincidence, but this is something that has become, part of the lore of, oh, the film was haunted.
yeah. Unless Friedkin was just such a bad person that he brought all this negative energy.
Well, the thing is, those were not the only things that caused people to think it was haunted. There were also deaths tied to the film. Not
Oh,
directly, but, and this was, I think, the bigger reason why people said it was haunted. There were, weirdly enough, 9 deaths that were connected to the film. The first one was Jack McGowan, who plays Burke, died during the production of the film after he had completed his scenes. The actress that plays Mrs. Karras also died during production.
mm,
Then, at some point during production, von Sydow found out that his brother had died in Sweden, which was quickly followed by Linda Blair finding out that her grandfather had died. Then, one of Miller's sons almost died in a a motorcycle crash. So pretty much, there were a lot of deaths, occurring in people's families or to actors, on the set. Even if they didn't happen on the set itself, there were a lot of connected deaths to the film itself, which caused people to wonder if, the devil was having an effect on it.
interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And overall, Burstyn has attributed 9 deaths as being related to the film, including a night watchman and an assistant camera's newborn baby. There are some other kind of spooky facts, I guess, connected to the film, including the fact that Paul Bateman, an actor who plays the doctor's assistant in, the arteriogram scene where they're getting blood from her neck and, doing the MRI, whatever, he was convicted of murdering a film critic and is believed to have picked up gay men and killed them throughout his life before he was jailed. On
Wow.
top of that, Mercedes McCambridge's son, John Markle, murdered his family. So, you also kind of have these murders connected to the film through people. And all of these elements, obviously not all of them happened during the production of the film, but the ones that did happen during the production led Friedkin himself to believe that the film was cursed, to the point that he asked technical advisor Father Thomas Birmingham to exorcise the set. But Birmingham refused because he said it would just create more anxiety. He did have a talk with the crew though to calm them down. Quite
That's
a crazy
crazy.
production. Yeah. So moving on to post production. This will be short. There wasn't a lot going on that wasn't too out of the normal in post production.
Besides the 4 editors for some reason.
Well, and like I said, I have an idea why, and my idea is that Friedkin was just hard to work with.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming that's why. Sorry, Friedkin, but that's what I'm going to assume. In post-production, Friedkin and Blatty did kind of have a falling out because Friedkin cut like 10 to 15 minutes, which Blatty thought was important in terms of exposition stuff. Friedkin disagreed, which I kind of, watching the film, I don't feel like anything else needs to be explained. So I do kind of feel like Friedkin made the right choice.
And I'm starting to wonder what version I watched because there was about 35 minutes of kind of nothing happening at the beginning of it before it started going. So,
well, that is kind of the film too.
Okay.
But
yeah,
maybe you did see the version with more stuff in it, because I know that the version with the crab walk scene, he did add some scenes back, so that might be why. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because this was over 2 hours.
Friedkin also decided to add subliminal elements, which is the flashing of the demon's face throughout parts of the film, which I don't know if you caught, which I thought was very effective. Interestingly enough, Friedkin decided to limit the amount of music in the film. So overall, there's only 17 minutes because he wanted it to have presence. And of course, he decided to use Tubular Bells, which is composed by Mike Oldfield. And that has now been popularized by the film and is known as its theme. But let's talk about the release, because that was also a shit show. First of all, there was the genuine fear that the film would be given an X rating by the MPAA, which is a box office death knell. You get an X rating, that's it, because that was in many ways associated with pornography back then, even now, which is why they actually changed it to the NC-17 rating for regular films.
Yeah, I was gonna say you don't really hear X ratings anymore.
Oh yeah, that's gone now. Surprisingly, the MPAA gave it an R without necessitating any cuts because they felt that it's an important film that people should see, which I think is interesting. Not everyone agreed with, though, and I think you can imagine who.
The Jesuits?
Well, in general, a lot of religious people, including members of churches, priests, stuff like that, did not want this film to be shown because, it depicted demons, it depicted, the devil making someone do, all these vulgar and sexual things. So there was a lot of pushback to the film. The original teaser itself, even before the film even came out, which I think you should watch it. I think it's a very effective teaser. It's literally just images of the white-faced demon quickly flashed in and out of darkness. That was banned from a lot of theaters, although that was more because people thought it was too frightening for the time. Now, of course, it's like, oh, that's nothing. But back then, I can imagine it was quite frightening. But, the film itself was banned in a lot of places. People that were religious called for the film to be burned or whatever. And actually, the banning of the film in a lot of places resulted in bus trips to see it in other cities. So people would get together, get on a bus, and travel to see the film. Blair actually received death threats from religious zealots who thought the film glorified Satan, to the point that Warner Brothers had to hire bodyguards to protect her for 6 months after the film's release. Which
I don't
care how I don't care how strongly you feel about something. That's not something you ever do. I don't care.
What tagging a child is insane.
Yeah. In many ways, it reminds me of Star Wars and the fans' reaction to that, although that was obviously a very different circumstance. But yeah, the people that did go to see the film did have very intense reactions. Paramedics were called to treat people that fainted or, were hysterical when watching the film. One woman fainted and broke her jaw on the seat in front of her and sued Warner Brothers successfully.
Wow.
So, yeah. So people were, very, very frightened by this film. Again, watching it now, by our standards today, it's quite tame in the sense that it's not like, oh, I can't sleep at night. But back then, it was very much, very frightening. Especially, you can tell if you watch films from that time. You can see how this is a lot more frightening than those other films. And it was actually a box office success in spite of its controversial release. Altogether with, later re-releases, it made $441 million. And its budget was only $12 million. So, yeah, it did very well.
It was only
That
12
being
million with after all of that
yes,
those problems. That's
after
kinda crazy.
all of that, that's the number I saw. I will say I wouldn't be surprised if that was the original budget and the actual budget was a lot higher. That being said, who knows? Maybe the guns help, keep the budget down or something. I don't know. I don't know. When it was first released, though, it got mixed reviews, though. A lot of people did commend it for its, scariness. But on the other hand, a lot of people call it shallow. So in general, it wasn't that well received by critics when it released. But in spite of that, it was nominated for 10 Academy Awards at the 46th Academy Awards, including being the first horror film to be nominated for Best Picture. It would go on to win Best Sound and Best Writing for a screenplay based on another medium, which I know is a category name we've talked about before. And notably, Linda Blair was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, a nomination that became very controversial because McCambridge at first was not credited for providing the voice of the demon in the film,
Mm.
and thus was not nominated with Blair, as many, including me, think she should have. Obviously, I'm not saying that that should take away from Linda Blair's performance. I don't think it does, but they did work in conjunction to bring those characters to life. And McCambridge has said that she was so upset when she first found out that she hadn't been given credit that she got into a wrong car, which still had the keys in the ignition, and thinking it was hers, drove 3 blocks before she realized she had stolen someone's car. Yeah, she was given credit eventually, thankfully. Although I will say only after suing Warner Brothers. Nowadays, The Exorcist is obviously very well respected. Its reception has grown with time, and it's considered one of the best horror films of all time. And people have noted that in many ways it kind of legitimized the horror genre as an actual genre to be taken seriously, and has had a long lasting influence on the genre as a whole. And two little notes to end off with, two fun little notes. Big fans of the film include Ozzy Osbourne, little callback to our last episode, who once sat through 8 showings of the film and has said it had an influence on him and his band members. So,
Wow.
yeah, now we know what influenced Black Sabbath. And I'm going to end my notes on this film with one last little story. In 1985, director Joel Schumacher was filming St. Elmo's Fire in Georgetown, same place they filmed The Exorcist. And he was refused permission to use certain facilities by the Jesuit priest faculty. He complained, saying, "You let Bill Friedkin film The Exorcist here in '73, and one of the characters in that film said, 'Your mother sucks cock in hell.'" A priest answered, "Yes, but the devil didn't win in their movie." So,
Oh, wow.
and now it's time for the all important question. What did you think?
It was interesting. It was
Mhm.
not what I was expecting because
Yeah,
obviously as I was expecting something a lot more harsh, but putting it into context that this is 1973, this is
yeah,
insane for that time, the things that this little girl is saying. This is the first movie that we've watched that I feel like is an old movie, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Like it feels like it takes a long time to get going. It has a lot of
Mhm.
things going on, some of which don't really like matter as much.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just feels old. But with that being said, I do think that this is a pretty compelling story and it is very interesting visually and
Mhm.
with all of the like religious themes in it.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea and I can see how it kind of like started this trope, I guess, in horror.
I completely agree in the sense that, you can tell that this is an older film. And to that point, in general, I feel like horror is one of those genres where you can kind of tell when it was released.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these, 70s, even 80s horror films, the buildup is a lot slower. I know at some point we're gonna watch another horror film, which I won't say what it is, but in that film, it's the same thing. The buildup is a lot slower. That being said, I do think it worked here because of the fact that it is sort of presented as this is real life. You know, I feel
Yeah.
like the fact that the slow buildup kind of roots you into this idea that this could happen to anyone, especially how they, instead of just going from, oh my God, something's going on with Regan, exorcism, instead going, okay, something's wrong with Regan. Let's go to the doctors. Oh, they're saying this. Okay, tests. Okay, something's weird. This is not working. Okay, like having that build, I think is very effective in creating what I honestly feel like is a different type of horror than either like, oh, slash, kill someone, or like jump scare. And that is the horror of this could happen to anyone, which
Yeah.
obviously, like, I don't believe it actually could theoretically, but my visceral reaction to the film is, oh my God, like, I can imagine myself going through this myself. And I feel like that's kind of where the horror is the strongest.
For me, when it comes to like the slow aspects of it, I don't even
Mhm.
mean like the whole doctors and testing thing because I
No,
think that's
yeah, no, I know.
really cool and like absolutely necessary. I think the
More of the
part,
beginning.
yeah, why are they in Iraq? I don't care. And then most of
Mhm.
the story around Father Karras, I feel like could have been
Mm.
explained a lot more succinctly and not necessarily having to see it. You know, it could have been like something that we get when he starts talking to his priest friend, you know?
I do completely like see what you're saying. I will say the Iraq stuff, it could be cut. That being said, I do think that it sets the tone for the whole film. Friedkin did keep it in the sense of, he wanted to have it clear that Father whatever Max von Sydow has had like run-ins with this demon before. He knows this demon, who incidentally his name is Pazuzu, which you don't find out until the sequel. Which is that's kind of why he said he had those Iraq scenes. I think that that's not even that important, and that it more sets this tone, which bridges kind of that moment where you're like, okay, everything seems fine. Like what's you
Yeah.
know, but you kind of have this like underlying feeling of no, something is kind of wrong.
For me, the Iraq stuff I wish was like tied in a little bit more to the main
Mm.
story with Reagan.
Which yeah, I can see.
I don't know. It just kind of felt disjointed for me. And if you kind of shaved off those first 15 minutes and then just started
Yeah,
with Reagan and her
which I do
mother,
understand.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that works better for me.
I will say I do wonder if it's also because you watched maybe the extended version with
Yeah.
those extra 10 or 15 minutes. I feel like maybe it did feel a little tighter, like the theatrical cut did feel a little tighter, which speaks to the fact that a lot of directors like to add in scenes for a director's cut, which, in
Yes.
my opinion, are a lot of times worse. Not always, but a lot of times worse.
Hmm.
So, and I mean, I do understand. I do completely see where you're coming from with the Father Kara stuff. I do like it personally because I feel like it builds his character and maybe adds some depth to his character, which you wouldn't find in a lot of other horror films. I feel like overall this film is a lot deeper than a lot of other horror films.
Yeah.
But I do completely see where it does kind of seem like what does this have to do with anything? And that was my reaction the first time I saw this film. I will say watching it a second time, it worked better for me. The first time I was like, "Oh, this is a good film." The second time I was like, "Wow, this is a fantastic, horror film." So I would be interested to see what you think of it watching it a second time.
The thing about that for me is not necessarily what the
Mhm.
content is of Father Karras's life.
No,
I
yeah.
think it's more where it is in the film. That doesn't work for
Mm.
me because I felt like we're kind of taking a break from the other story and then we're going to something that feels unrelated until we're like shown that it is related. And I would prefer if it was more like explicitly related.
Mm. Yeah, I do get that. And I do think that that feeling was, there for me first time watching it too.
I also wanted to say about the testing and the like doctor visits,
Mhm.
the visual language of all of those scenes and the way that kind of like medical stuff worked, I can see the
Mhm.
exact like tie, like the thread to Stranger Things, especially first season.
Yeah,
That is
that's true.
so alike. And it's because it's not like medical in the traditional sense. It's a lot more like governmental medical. It feels like even in this film where it's like it's kind of experimental in a weird way.
It's all the men in like the suits kind of watching and yeah.
Yes.
I
And
think
it
it's very effective in creating this kind of weird feeling of you're like this shouldn't feel bad, but it feels bad.
and they all seem like they don't know what they're doing as well, which like kind of adds to that like weird feeling of like this is not going to go well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's honestly probably one of the most brilliant parts of the film. Like that middle section where they're doing the tests. I also did want to shout out the effects because I do think that they have aged very well. I do think
Mhm.
that in some ways they're, simpler if you compare them to like the Terminator, like they're not cutting out anyone's eye. But that being said, I do still think that they aged very, very well, especially with like the slow progress of it. What did you think? I did want to get your thoughts on
I
this.
did like the effects. And then I wanted to kind
Mhm.
of say something about what you said with the slow progress of it. To me, when she got possessed, it almost felt like it came out of nowhere. Like
Mm,
the initial like possession as it like built up, I was totally bought in, but immediately when she just got
right.
possessed, I was kind of like, where did that come from?
Well, I did want to ask what your point of like what the point of possession was in your mind, because I do wonder if different people have different like ideas of when it first starts. Because to be honest, I'm not sure what the first point of possession is.
There's the stuff happening in the attic, and then
Yeah,
next time you see her, she's like acting kind of weird. She starts off a little bit weird, and then like the next scene, she's like not foaming at the mouth, but like fucked up already. Like, and it
yeah,
seems like a very kind of
mhm,
fast acting thing. And then from there, you kind of have a slow progression where she gets like
right.
worse and worse. So to me, that like kind of
Mm.
initial possession, I don't know.
It's like a little jolt.
Yeah, especially like
Yeah.
after the 35 to 40 minutes of just kind of like regular life across 3 stories.
That's true, yeah. But what did you wanna say? I interrupted you, what do you wanna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say I did think the effects were really good. I thought the green
Mhm.
slime was insane.
Yeah.
I thought her, like especially her, like, throwing stuff around was really cool, and the way they shot
Yeah,
those, I thought was really nice. The camera angles and, like, kind of moving the camera would move, like, with the
yeah.
stuff in the room.
Which I will say, Friedkin, for all his setting off guns next to people's heads, he is a really good director,
Mhm.
like, in my opinion. It's shot very well, it's, I think, directed very well, it works, I think, very, very well. Not to overuse that word because I just said it 3 times in a row, but but yeah, I completely agree with the effects. Especially, like, I noticed in one part you kinda see this little slime coming from her nose, and I was like, "Ugh." If I saw, like, someone looking like that, with, like, the cuts and green skin and all that, I'd be scared shitless, which I know I
Yeah.
was kinda like, That's not that scary these days," but if I saw that in real life, I would be running from there, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think the other unsung hero of this movie is the set of the house, the like kind of grandiosity of it. I don't know if that's even the word, but how it's like kind of set up where she's slightly higher. You have the like 2 steps, and then you go down to the mom's room. You got like 2 more steps to another little landing, and it's like circular, and you can have a lot of
Yeah.
cool like shots up the stairs. I think that was
Oh,
really
yeah.
well constructed because I don't think it was a real house, was it?
I don't believe so. I think parts of it were real. For instance, obviously the outside is real,
Yeah.
but a lot of it was constructed. And I agree. I think having it kind of feel grand helped when the exorcist or like the possession actually starts. It kind of, in some way, kind of feels like, oh, this can happen to anyone. I also want to say, even their like their cellar or whatever is freaking grand. That place is
The
huge.
attic,
I was
yeah.
like, this is the cellar, yeah, or the attic, yeah, where they're doing like the Ouija board stuff. Yeah, I was like, that's
Oh, yeah,
giant.
that's the basement. I was thinking of when she was, like, walking
That's
through
yeah.
all of the, like, extra stuff in
Oh,
the
no, no,
attic too.
no. Yeah, no, the basement. That's what I was thinking of. The
Yeah.
basement. Yeah.
The set was very cool, and I thought the way they, like, used it, especially I like, the shot that I immediately thought of was when
Hmm.
Friedkin or his cameraman is down on the first floor, and then you're looking at the 2 people, like, talking across the stairs from each other, and you're, like, looking at the
Yeah.
ceiling. I thought that was really cool.
Oh yeah, I do love that. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite shots from the whole film. I also did want to say, I think in large part, obviously, everything we talked about helps to make the film work. But I do think that ultimately the actors in this film kind of pulled the most weight
Yeah.
in, selling it, because I do agree that ultimately, the Reagan character was the most important one to get right, but I think that, for instance, like Chris, if they hadn't gotten Chris right, that also would have, ruined the film.
Absolutely, yeah.
I kind of feel like those two are the most important roles in the whole film, which is ironic considering that like the priests are important, but they're not that important in the sense that you have to get like the perfect performance for them.
Yeah.
And I do think that Linda Blair and Burstyn both, they do fantastic jobs. I could not imagine acting like that ever in my entire life. Then again, I'm not an actor, but you know what I mean. Like, I don't know how they did it. Especially Linda Blair, who's an 11-year-old, I think.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So I think ultimately, for me, this film feels a lot like our album last week, in the fact that this is a very big deal. It's a feat. It is setting the tone for an important genre, but I feel like it's not fully figuring out all of the like things that have to happen in that genre, because to me this film,
that's really interesting,
feels like you could cut 40 minutes and it would be better.
Yeah,
because even the exorcism scene to me felt too long.
I want to hear what your score is then.
Yes, so I had 2 scores written down in different places. The more I think about it, the more I feel like this is a 2.5. And I think that that's kind of what I'm going to lock in. I did enjoy this.
Yeah.
I think it's entertaining. It's not something I'm going to return to soon. And I think that it kind of, I will at some point, I think. But I feel like it kind of suffers from the fact that it is like very early on in the development of this style of horror. I feel like it can be done better. And I feel like I will see it be done better.
I will say we are divided again, which I feel like isn't a surprise at this point.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone knows my score is going to be high unless like it's Megalopolis. This is a 4.5.
Oh, even higher than I thought.
I mean, I personally think that this is, even though I don't find this like crazy scary or anything, I do think that this is a fantastic horror film. And I think you can see how it did influence a lot of films, but it still kind of feels fresh, even though you can easily tell it was from the 70s when you're watching it.
I definitely agree with that.
From its style. Because of that, even though there are obviously some things that I would tweak, like I do think some things in the beginning are a little bit, not disjointed, but a little awkward. Like that just brings it down maybe a little bit to a 4.5. But that being said, I still think it's an exceptional film. And I think it was kind of everything came together perfectly to make it what it is, in spite of in
spite of
Friedkin's guns and hurting people. So what can I say? I guess he pulled it off somehow, even though he hurt everyone in the process.
Yeah. I was thinking you were going to give this a 4, but I didn't know you liked it that much. I should have known high score.
I did. I want to see if your score will change if you watch more films from the 70s, more horror films from the 70s, because there is a horror film that we're going to watch kind of soon, not that soon, but kind of soon. I kind of have similar feelings to what you have about this film. And I feel like maybe after watching that film, you might change your mind, but we'll see. We'll see when we get there. We might forget by then and not talk about The Exorcist at all in that episode. So
we probably will if we're not watching any other horror films between then,
That's true. Which, hey, who knows?
Yeah.
The audience certainly doesn't know.
Exactly. And I can't think off the top of my head either, so I don't know.
Me neither. My brain is fried because I was at work this morning.
And we've been talking for at least an hour and a half at this point. I know it's longer on our end, but we're cutting.
It was long, but I always enjoyed talking about Friedkin because it's hilarious. Obviously, like it shouldn't have happened the way it did, but it's still hilarious.
And it's not like hilarious in a haha, that's funny. It's hilarious in a how is this real kind of way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which,
like, how did this all actually happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was an interesting week. We kind of flipped
Certainly
on our music and movie ratings. And I'm kind of curious to see what episode, because I don't think we've had one yet, an episode where I like the film more than you and you like the music more than me.
I am very interested to what will be that episode.
Yeah, because it's inevitable. It's going to happen at some point.
Yeah, at some point.
Maybe it'll be next week.
Is it going to happen? Yeah, is it going to be next week or is it going to be in 3 years?
Hopefully not 3 years. We might have to design one.
I don't think so. Design one. We'll see.
Yes, we will.
We'll see for sure.
But in the meantime, follow us on Instagram, Follow us on Rate Your Music and Letterboxd.
That's right. You can find all our information on our link tree in our Instagram and on the description on this episode.
And make sure you email us at upcpod@gmail.com if we got anything wrong, or if you want to shout out where you're from. This week, a special shout out to everyone in Australia listening.
That's right. And also send us an email talking about how you love how Friedkin just be, shooting guns next to people's heads.
Yes.
Why not?
If you have any fun stories about how you were an actor and you had guns shot near your head, please let us know.
Exactly. And last of all, leave us a little rating, a little review, please.
Yes, please.
And tell your friends, please.
We'll see you next week.
I guess that's it. We'll see you next week.